The first knock came just as the first pale light of dawn brushed across my front porch. By the time I opened the door, the sun was beginning to rise over the quiet neighborhood, and standing there was a woman I hadn't seen in 14 years. Her coat was wrinkled, her hands trembled around a worn canvas bag, and tears streamed silently down her face. She looked straight into my eyes as though every mile she had traveled had led to that single moment. Then she whispered the words that shattered every wall I had built around my heart. I have nowhere else to go. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us humanity is never truly lost. That I stood frozen with my hand still on the doorknob. The woman before me was Meredith Holloway, the person who had once known every dream I carried, every fear I tried to hide, and every promise I believed would last forever. Years earlier, we had planned a future together in a small lakeside town where we imagined children playing in the backyard and Sunday afternoons filled with laughter. Instead, life unraveled in ways neither of us expected. She disappeared without warning, leaving behind only a short letter that said she had to leave and that someday I might understand. I never did. Time forced me forward. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I restored old furniture for a living, filling my workshop with weathered oak tables, forgotten rocking chairs, and antique cabinets that deserved another chance. I often thought there was something comforting about repairing broken things. Wood could be sanded, polished, and strengthened. Human hearts were far more complicated. Looking at Meredith now, I barely recognized the confident woman I once loved. Her auburn hair had faded with streaks of silver. The bright determination that once lit her eyes had been replaced by exhaustion and quiet sorrow. She wasn't asking for love. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was simply asking for somewhere safe to breathe. Without another word, I stepped aside. She entered slowly, almost expecting me to change my mind before both feet crossed the threshold. My little home smelled of fresh coffee and baked bread. Morning sunlight poured through the kitchen windows, painting warm rectangles across the wooden floor. It felt strange that after all those years, our lives had somehow collided again under such ordinary daylight that I handed her a mug of coffee and watched her wrap both hands around it as though the warmth alone might hold her together. She thanked me with a voice so fragile it barely sounded like her own. The silence between us stretched longer than either of us knew how to fill. Eventually she explained, life had not rewarded the decision she made years ago. Shortly after leaving, her father had fallen seriously ill. She had devoted years to caring for him while working multiple jobs just to keep them afloat. When he passed away, overwhelming debt swallowed everything he had left behind. Friends slowly disappeared. Relationships collapsed under the weight of constant hardship. She married someone she believed would help build a new beginning, but instead found herself trapped with a man who isolated her from everyone she cared about and slowly destroyed her confidence until she no longer recognized herself. When she finally gathered enough courage to leave, she discovered there was almost nothing left. No savings. No family willing to help. No close friends. The only address she could still remember by heart was mine. She lowered her head and admitted that she almost turned back several times during the journey because she believed I would slam the door in her face. The truth was, a part of me had imagined doing exactly that. Pain leaves deep fingerprints on memory, yet another part of me couldn't ignore the frightened person sitting across my kitchen table. Over the next several days, Meredith slept in the guest room while I continued working in my workshop behind the house. Neither of us tried to force conversations. Healing often begins not with words but with simple acts of ordinary kindness. She started helping around the house without being asked. She cleaned dusty shelves, watered neglected flowers, cooked meals from whatever ingredients she found, and somehow brought quiet life back into rooms that had long felt empty. One afternoon, while organizing old boxes in the attic, she found a faded wooden birdhouse we had painted together years ago. Instead of pretending it meant nothing, she carefully carried it downstairs. She asked whether we could repair it together. For hours we sanded cracked wood, replaced broken pieces, and applied fresh paint under the warm afternoon sun. Neither of us realized until we finished that we had been smiling. Sometimes healing arrives disguised as simple work shared between two people carrying invisible scars. Just when I began believing life was finally settling into peaceful routine, someone arrived unexpectedly. A woman named Claire stepped onto my porch during lunch carrying a thick envelope. She introduced herself as Meredith's former neighbor. Inside the envelope were legal documents proving Meredith had quietly spent years caring not only for her father but also for Claire's disabled husband after work every evening without accepting payment. There were handwritten letters from elderly neighbors describing how Meredith regularly bought groceries for struggling families while barely surviving herself. There was even a letter from a local pastor explaining that she secretly paid utility bills for strangers using overtime wages she desperately needed herself. I stared at Meredith in disbelief. She had spent years helping everyone except herself. When I asked why she had never told anyone, she simply smiled sadly and said that kindness loses something precious the moment it becomes a performance. That answer stayed with me. Days turned into weeks. Meredith found a part-time position at the local library. The work wasn't glamorous, but she loved recommending books to children and helping older visitors navigate the computers. Little by little, color returned to her face. The neighbors who first wondered who the unfamiliar woman was gradually welcomed her into the community. She organized book drives, volunteered at weekend charity sales, and helped restore the neglected flower beds outside the community center. Watching her rebuild herself reminded me that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it quietly chooses to begin again. One ordinary morning after another. One afternoon an unexpected letter arrived addressed to Meredith. It came from an attorney representing a woman she barely remembered helping years earlier. The woman had recently passed away and left Meredith a modest inheritance, not because Meredith expected anything in return, but because one afternoon of kindness had completely changed her life when she needed it most. The amount wasn't enormous. It wasn't enough to erase every hardship, but it was enough to clear Meredith's remaining debts and give her the freedom to truly start over. She cried for nearly an hour, not because of the money, because for the first time in years, life had answered her kindness with kindness. As summer approached, my workshop became busier than ever. Meredith began helping customers choose restored furniture, and her natural warmth quickly earned everyone's trust. People weren't just buying tables or chairs anymore, they were listening to stories about forgotten pieces finding new purpose, without realizing it. Those stories became reflections of our own lives. One elderly customer purchased an old rocking chair I had almost thrown away months earlier because it seemed beyond repair. After hearing its story, she smiled and said that people and furniture have something in common. The ones carrying the deepest cracks often become the strongest after careful restoration. Her words lingered long after she left. One bright afternoon, Meredith and I walked through the town park during a local community fair. Families laughed beneath colorful tents while children chased bubbles floating through the warm air. Music drifted gently across the grass. She admitted something she had carried in silence for 14 years. She hadn't left because she stopped loving me, she left because she believed caring for her dying father would destroy every future we planned together. She thought sacrificing our relationship would spare me years of financial hardship and emotional burden. Instead, her silence created pain neither of us deserved. I confessed that I had spent years believing I wasn't enough. She had spent years believing she wasn't worthy of returning. Both of us had been wrong. Forgiveness doesn't erase history. It changes what history means. We couldn't recover the years we lost, but we could decide what to do with the years still waiting ahead. As autumn sunlight painted golden colors across the streets, we transformed part of my workshop into a free repair program where struggling families could bring broken furniture instead of throwing it away. Teenagers learning woodworking volunteered alongside retired craftsmen eager to pass on forgotten skills. The workshop became more than a business. It became a place where people discovered that almost anything broken could become beautiful again with patience, honesty, and care. Meredith often greeted newcomers with quiet compassion because she understood better than anyone how frightening it feels to arrive carrying nothing except hope. One crisp afternoon, she stood on the same front porch where she had once arrived with only a canvas bag and trembling hands. This time she wasn't searching for shelter, she was welcoming volunteers arriving for another community restoration project. I watched from inside and realized something extraordinary. The woman who believed she had nowhere else to go had become the reason countless others finally felt they belonged somewhere. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment and tell us whether you believe forgiveness is something that can truly rebuild a broken life, or whether some wounds are simply too deep to heal. Your words may encourage someone reading the comments who desperately needs hope today. As the afternoon sun settled warmly across the front yard, Meredith looked at the home that had once been only a desperate destination and was now filled with laughter, purpose, friendship, and peace. I understood then that the greatest acts of love are rarely dramatic. They are found in opening a door, offering a chair, pouring a cup of coffee, listening without judgment, and believing that no one should be defined forever by their worst season. We cannot rewrite yesterday, but we can choose compassion today, and that choice has the power to transform tomorrow. The knock that once reopened old wounds became the beginning of a life neither of us imagined possible. Sometimes the person standing on your doorstep isn't arriving to change your plans. They are arriving to remind you that broken hearts, like weathered wood, can become stronger, more beautiful, and more meaningful after they have been carefully restored. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Thank you for being part of our community, where every story reminds us that kindness costs little, forgiveness heals deeply, and second chances can change a life forever. If you'd like, I can also